When I could hear and see again, I was stunned by the devastating sight that stretched out before me. As I thought, the Colosseum had been totally wrecked. Debris lay all over the place, the majority buried within the gigantic crater in the middle. The reinforced walls had been cracked, pockmarked like the surface of the moon after suffering eons of bombardment from meteorites. Well, given that I had just unleashed my most powerful draconic meteor strike ever, I guess that made sense. Where's Feng Tianyang? I scanned through the rubble, while simultaneously relying on my heaven and earth chi sense to pick out his presence. Having expended almost all of my chi in the last attack, my chi sense had severely weakened, and I could only rely on my physical senses. Staggering through the fumes and dust, while cautiously making my way through the rubble, I approached the last position where I saw Feng Tianyang. Even if the guy was still conscious, he wasn't the type to launch a sneak attack, and if he did, I was confident that I would be able to react in time. Nonetheless, I had to finish this once and for all, or the match wouldn't end. Huff, huff. I could hear my own ragged breathing through the din the spectators were making. Over the seemingly deafening footsteps, as my feet crunched against the debris, I didn't know if the breathing was my own or Feng Tianyang's. A movement somewhere across the other side of the crater, a blur of crimson, and a bright flare of fiery chi. Go down already! Feng Tianyang roared as he swung his blazing sword at me. I parried his flaming blade with my swords and skidded backward, much of my strength having left me earlier. Unlike me, Feng Tianyang still appeared to possess large amounts of strength. No, his reserves were just as depleted as mine. He was burning every ounce of chi he had left in the hopes of defeating me before he exhausted himself. In other words, if I can hold out and survive his next attack, it would be my victory. But there was no meaning to winning like that. I wanted to overcome Feng Tianyang's attacks with everything I had on the line. I wanted to win honorably and prove that I was superior to him. This wasn't a life and death battle. It was a tournament. It wasn't as if my life was at stake or I needed to resort to such underhanded methods to survive. No, in a tournament, it was my pride that was at stake here. If Feng Tianyang was an enemy from a demonic sect who was trying to kill me, then I wouldn't think twice about letting his reserves run out and then killing him from behind. But this was a competition between students, a tournament to determine one's rankings. It wasn't a battle for survival. Therefore, I wanted to pit my strength against Feng Tianyang's and prove that I was stronger than him. In a battle for survival, I didn't need to prove my strength. The victory condition for that was the fact that I was still alive after the fight. However, a tournament was different. Neither of us was going to die. But what endured after the match was the manner of our victory and our attitude and respect toward our opponents. I wasn't that guy, after all. Woo! With a bellow, I dug my heels in and halted my slide backward, drawing whatever chi I had left and infusing my swords with it. For a moment, it seemed that I was overpowering Feng Tianyang, my azure chi freezing the flames on his sword and turning them into ice. Like I'll let you! Feng Tianyang roared back and exerted more physical strength into his blow, shattering the ice and revitalizing the flames. Go! Tianyang, the girls screamed from above. Take him out! Fei Wu, guys yelled behind them. Wu! One single voice drowned out everyone else's, to the point where I raised my head to glance at the window in surprise. It was Tang Chi Hong. She was pressing her fists against the reinforced glass and yelling at me. Don't you dare lose to that jerk! Kick his ass! I'm not a jerk. Feng Tianyang protested, chagrined. He was so used to being fawned over by the girls that he didn't expect one to be cheering me on. I chuckled, ignoring my opponent, and nodded toward Tang Chi Hong's direction. I'll do my best. Is she your girlfriend or something? Feng Tianyang growled. My mouth curled upward a little, though whether it was from joy or bitterness, even I myself couldn't tell. I wish she is. Ha! Feng Tianyang snorted. Lucky bastard. I don't want to hear that from you. We sprang apart in a shower of sparks, our swords still trembling from the violent encounter. Without hesitation, we both kicked off the ground and closed the gap between us within a single bound, our swords swinging toward each other. Whoa! Both of us bellowed as we clashed against each other. the remnants of our chi actually intensifying and swelling around us despite us being drained. Fire and ice collided, burned and froze, appeared and vanished, before culminating in an explosion. We continued to exchange several ferocious blows for 4 more minutes, our strength and energy not diminishing at all. The devastated ground around us crumbled further, sending more debris into the air as our swirling chi levitated them. But with so much damage dealt to them during the course of the match, there wasn't much of a difference on the surface. Gritting his teeth, Feng Tianyong stepped forward and struck at me. Instinctively, I used Lu, having gotten used to the pattern of his attacks after the ferocious exchange over the last few minutes, and slipped through his defenses. Feng Tianyong's eyes widened in disbelief when I halted his sword by moving my arm into the trajectory of his sword, stopping him before he could carry out his attack. Before he could respond, I rammed the pommel of my sword into his chest, causing him to stagger. "You bastard!" Bellowing in rage, Feng Tianyong slashed downward, but having executed Liu, I could anticipate the movements of my opponent and move accordingly. Instead, I spun to the side and kicked him in his midriff, causing him to double over. Before he could raise his head, I pressed the cold steel of my right sword against the back of his neck. He froze. "It's over," I told him. "Surrender now." For a few seconds, I could hear Feng Tianyong grinding his teeth in frustration as he chewed on the bleak possibilities open to him, but he eventually relented and dropped his sword onto the ground before raising both his hands. "I give up. Winner, Fei Wu." Teacher Kai wasted no time announcing my victory. His voice was followed by groans of dismay from the girls, which were then drowned out by the rugged cheers of the guys. Withdrawing my right sword, I raised it to the air and did a mock salute. The guys' cheers grew louder. "You really know how to pander to an audience, don't you?" Tong Shay snickered when he saw me. I waved at him and the rest of my friends when I caught sight of their approach. "Great job, Wu," Tong Shihong said in delight. Evidently, she was one of the only girls who didn't cheer for Feng Tianyong and encouraged me instead. Recalling her shout near the end of my fight, I smiled. "Thanks." "Not bad. Not bad at all." Lian Ru was nodding in approval as she strolled beside Tong Shay while winking mischievously. "Impressive," Zhu Jiao exclaimed and smacked my shoulder. "You've made it to the semifinals as well." There was never any doubt he would, Ban Zhang declared proudly. "Oi, what were you so proud of? I was the one who got into the semifinals, not you. It wasn't as if you were my manager or something. That role would probably belong to Tong Shay." "Well, I'm glad it is over," I muttered before staggering unsteadily. Tang Qihong quickly stepped forward to support me. "You have best go to the infirmary and get your injuries treated." I didn't argue. The injuries I sustained during the match against Feng Tianyong were much more severe than the ones I received when fighting Kuang Hu. While Kuang Hu was certainly more ruthless and much faster, Feng Tianyong was a lot more formidable and powerful. Kuang Hu could only leave superficial cuts on my skin, but Feng Tianyong literally incinerated me. If I didn't have inner chi to protect myself, I would have turned to ash long ago. "Yeah, thanks." Leaning on Tang Qihong and Tong Shay, I allowed them to support me toward the infirmary. Feng Tianyong was probably ferried there by his female fan club way ahead of me, so we didn't have to worry about him. Even though we fought so ferociously against each other, it wasn't as if we held any ill will or grudge. Like I said, Feng Tianyong was a classmate and friend who treated me decently. Okay, he didn't really step in when I was being bullied, but he didn't participate in abusing me either. Or maybe he did help me out once or twice, and I helped him in return. I wasn't calculative enough to keep track of all these little things. "You're finally here." Teacher Yi folded her arms and stared at me as I limped into her infirmary. Behind her, another student groaned as he lay on the bed. "Ah, Zhu Jiao!" Xianxia was one of Teacher Yi's assistants, tending to another patient who had just finished his duel. She finished up her treatment and stood up to greet him. Zhu Jiao returned the wave, and then Xianxia turned to nod at the rest of us in acknowledgement. Evidently, she only had eyes for Zhu Jiao. I briefly wondered if she knew about Zhu Jiao's affection for Bai Ningshui. She had to, right? The whole school was aware of the special relationship between the two of them. Obviously, I wasn't tactless enough to ask her about it directly, though. Xianxia, can you take care of Shangbing for me? Right away. Xianxia snapped out of her love-struck stupor and hurried toward another patient who was moaning softly in a nearby bed. Teacher Yi turned toward me and shook her head. Apparently, she could tell what kind of injuries I suffered from just a single glance. Wow, both of you really didn't hold back, did you? Have you already treated Feng Tianyong? I asked. Teacher Yi gave me a sharp look before she sighed and nodded. Yeah, his injuries were marginally better than yours. Marginally. She shook her head again in disapproval. Look, I understand that this is a prestigious competition and that you're all fighting to achieve the highest ranks you can, but show a little restraint, all right? Try not to kill each other. You're all classmates. Trust me, I muttered. If I really wanted to kill my opponent, he would already be dead. I don't doubt that, Teacher Yi replied warily, but you'll make my job and that of Teacher Jiao's a lot more difficult. Sorry, I wasn't able to muster a retort to that. All right, go lie down over there. Teacher Yi gestured toward an empty bed. Wait for your turn. As for the rest of you, she turned to my friends. The queue is long and the treatment will take some time, so I suggest you all return to your dorm. Student Zhu Jiao, don't you have your quarterfinal match tomorrow? Make sure you have enough rest. Teacher Yi, I already finished my match yesterday. Zhu Jiao scratched his head and laughed a little sheepishly. I didn't drop by the infirmary because I was completely uninjured. I'm not lying, honestly. Teacher Yi regarded him for a few seconds and then nodded. I believe you. You guys should leave first. The treatment will take a while. There was a faint undercurrent of don't get in the way of my job. My friends weren't dense enough to miss it, so they nodded and complied. I'll see you later, Wu, Tang Shihong told me as she waved. Yeah, I'll see you in the dorm later. Tong Shui added. He grinned cheekily. Don't go anywhere else. We're going to throw you and Zhu Jiao a party. Isn't it too premature to be celebrating? Ban Zhang asked with a raised eyebrow. It's not as if they won the tournament yet. Oh, come on. Don't be such a spoil sport. Tong Shui threw an arm over Ban Zhang's neck and playfully dragged him out of the infirmary. Let us have some fun. Yeah. Zhu Jiao nodded as he followed them, his expression thoughtful. It might a while before we can enjoy ourselves like this. I wasn't sure I liked the ominous tone of his words. You both made it to the semi-finals. Tong Shui told Zhu Jiao, unaware of the premonition I felt. You, Wu, Bai Ningshui, and Li Chenlong, all 4 semi-finalists are from our class. This is a cause for celebration. It seems likely that you'll be able to keep your promise and meet Bai Ningshui in the finals if you clear the semi-finals. Ban Zhang nodded, careful with his words. Yeah, Zhu Jiao held up his hand and clenched it to a fist. I'll defeat her and then I'll confess to her. How romantic. Lian Ru's eyes were shining. In contrast, Tang Shihong looked grim as she placed her hands on her hips. Do you have any chance of winning against Bai Ningshui? She's quite the monster, you know. She has been completely unbeaten throughout all her years in the academy. What are you talking about? Tong Shui scoffed. Zhu Jiao could pull Bai Ningshui's long winning streak to a halt. He has made it this far without injury. I was only lucky with the matches. Zhu Jiao replied modestly. Tong Shui snorted at that. Yeah, right. You faced 3 student council members in a row and defeated all of them. Before that, you emerged the unbeaten winner of the group of death during the preliminary rounds. And you're telling me you got lucky with the matches? Ah! Zhu Jiao scratched the back of his head as he laughed sheepishly. Hey, are you guys finished with your conversation? If you want to talk, go somewhere else. You're disturbing the patients. Sorry. My friends bowed apologetically when Teacher Yi reprimanded them, and they quickly left. Heaving a sigh, I proceeded toward the bed that Teacher Yi directed me to and plopped down on it. Oh! Hey! I was slightly surprised to see Feng Tianyong on the neighboring bed. Apparently he was required to wait in line like me. Teacher Yi wasn't one to play favorites. After all, and she wouldn't be attracted to someone as young as Feng Tianyong. Her heart was most likely set on Teacher Jiao. Sorry about earlier. What? No. Feng Tianyong was astonished by my apology, and he waved his hands frantically. It was a great match. I'm proud to have fought against you. I smiled. I'm glad you think that way. How else am I supposed to think? You were a formidable foe, and you've earned my respect all over again. He leaned in close. Hey, how did you grow so strong? I thought you were only a 1-star constitution cultivator. Do you have some sort of secret you've been keeping from the rest of us? No. Actually, I might. I thought back to my experiences back in Senlin Forest, of my physical transformation upon consuming magical beasts and demonic monsters, meat in the abyss. Then I recalled how I absorbed the chi from 100 demonic martial artists in the Chinese parasol tree sect's hideout a couple of years ago. If Feng Tianyong was skeptical, he didn't show it. Instead, he leaned back on the soft pillow, grimacing as he did so, and then glanced up at the ceiling. My goodness, this means the semifinals are all our class. You, Zhu Jiao, Li Chunlong, and Bai Ningshui. Wow, our class 1 to 4 is totally dominating the tournament. No doubt some people are going to suspect our class of cheating or something, I muttered under my breath. Ha! Even if they do, they don't have any proof. Besides, how are we supposed to cheat? Do they think we can rig the matches or bribe the referees or something? And Feng Tianyong narrowed his eyes. If they can't believe we won through the virtue of our superior strength alone, then they're welcome to challenge us to an official match. That sounds troublesome, I complained. It was already tiring to put up with these almost daily tournament matches, and now they wanted us to accept challenges from dissatisfied schoolmates who couldn't believe that we had progressed this far? That's just how it is, Feng Tianyong replied breezily. Easy for him to say. He didn't have to fight in the semifinals. I'll welcome any challenge. Of course you would. Feng Tianyong would never throw away any chance for him to show off in front of the girls. As if to emphasize my point, Feng Tianyong whistled when Xianxia walked past and waved at her in a friendly manner. Doing a great job as always, Xianxia. Yes. Xianxia smiled politely, but moved on to tend to the other students. I glanced at Feng Tianyong and was surprised to see that he wasn't disappointed. He merely leaned back against his bed and relaxed. I see Xianxia is still pining for Zhu Jiao. Eh? What, you didn't notice? Feng Tianyong sat up to stare at me. I shook my head. No, I mean I knew about Xianxia's feelings for Zhu Jiao all this while, but I just didn't expect you to say it so bluntly. Oh, well, it's none of my business, but even so, it's kind of tough to see her pine one-sidedly for an unrequited love. Zhu Jiao's attention is completely on Bai Ningshui. After all, that's one hell of a love rival. Right. Well, there's the harem option. Feng Tianyong grinned. Zhu Jiao could learn from me and choose all of the girls, have both Bai Ningshui and Xianxia. I'm sure they'll learn to accept each other. Bai Ningshui will surely be the official wife, but Xianxia probably wouldn't mind being the mistress. All Zhu Jiao needs is to embrace and love all the girls equally, like me. There was so many things wrong with what Feng Tianyong said that I didn't know where to begin. Too tired to argue, I merely sank into silence. Feng Tianyong refused to give up, however, and opened an eye to peer at me. Speaking of which, how about you, Fei Wu? How's your relationship going with Tang Qihong? I smiled at him. That's none of your business. Teacher Yi wasn't kidding when she said that the treatment would take a while. By the time she was done with me, it was already late evening. Fortunately, Feng Tianyong had gone in before me, and he had left long ago, so I didn't have to listen to him bragging about conquering a harem of girls while returning to the dormitory. Isn't that Xianxia? While I was walking down the corridor, I caught sight of a familiar figure. Xianxia was several paces ahead of me, hurriedly striding down the length of the corridor and turning around a corner. Since we were going the same way, I hastened my pace to catch up with her. I didn't have any ulterior motives. I only intended to accompany her on her way back to the dormitory, especially when it was this late at night. However, Xianxia wasn't proceeding in the direction of the dormitory. I was astonished to see her turn round a corner and head for the second level. That's... Intrigued and having nothing better to do, I ended up giving in to my curiosity and following her. Okay, I knew what I was doing was stalking, but I just couldn't help it. I wanted to know where Xianxia was going this late at night, if it wasn't the girls' dorm. How suspicious, I thought. the irony completely flying over my head as usual. Or maybe I enjoyed being a hypocrite while I pathetically tried to justify my stalkerish behavior. Whatever the case, I needed to follow her for the plot to move along. It sounded contrived, but then let's be serious. Which guy didn't follow a beautiful girl around when she's all alone? Don't tell Tang Chi-hong I said that, or she would absolutely murder me. Using shadow steps, I kept my presence concealed and succeeded in tailing Xianxia without her knowing. I suddenly realized that shadow steps were perfect for stalking, but reminded myself not to pull something like this again. I mean, jokes aside, there was something amiss with Xianxia's movements. I wasn't stalking her because I was a pervert. The more I studied her, the more I understood that my curiosity was piqued by her body language. Xianxia was looking around, as if watching for someone. She looked all nervous, perspiring despite the chill of the night. Her frantic glancing and jumping at shadows only served to harden my suspicions and magnified my curiosity. Isn't that? I frowned when Xianxia finally stopped in front of a room. She glanced around one last time, as if making sure no one was following her, and then knocked on the door. It's me. There was a muffled response from behind the door, and then it swung open. Xianxia looked around cautiously one last time before she disappeared into the room. The door then shut and clicked, signaling that it was locked. Huh. Frowning, I wondered what had gotten Xianxia into such a high state of alert. Once I was sure no one would notice, I stealthily made my way toward the door. Stopping in front of it, I gaped at the words stenciled into the front. The student council? Ugh! I heard Yuan Mei grinding her teeth as she bit on her finger. Even if I couldn't see her, I could somewhat sense her foul mood and her actions through my heaven and earth chi sense. She was clearly frustrated over something. How could this happen? Ding Yan exclaimed angrily. We paid such careful attention to the matchups. I can't believe Zhu Jiao advanced to the semifinals without much difficulty, even though he was assigned to the group of death and had to face 3 of us. This time it sounded like Gu Chun's song. It's because of that Fei Wu bastard, Li Guoqiang snarled. We thought Feng Tianyong would be able to defeat him, but he somehow beat even Tianyong. He didn't seem to be anything special up until this point. Thanks to him, all the matchups are ruined, Xinlai sighed. What are we supposed to do now? The plans? Plan. What plan? Scowling, I leaned closer to pay more attention to the student council members' conversation. I could sense the rough positions of all the student council members. The majority of them were seated on the luxurious couches that surrounded the huge mahogany table where their notes and documents were scattered on. Only one person stood aloof, right next to the windows. Folding his arms, he gazed outside, his expression grim. Chenlong? Xianxia asked, concerned. Li Chenlong finally turned his head back to look at the rest of the student council. I'll take care of Fei Wu. Chenlong, you're the only one left among us, Xinlai told him. So we're counting on you. Will you really be able to defeat Fei Wu? He's just trash, Li Guoqiang growled dismissively. He got lucky, that's all. Even luck wouldn't allow him to defeat Wu Xing from Kunlun sect, Wu Heigui, Kuang Hu, and Feng Tianyong in consecutive matches, Gu Chensong warned. Technically, he was mistaken. I didn't face them in consecutive matches. I fought Wu Heigui early on during the preliminary rounds, and not before I fought Wu Xing. In other words, we can't afford to underestimate him, Ding Yan remarked. I won't, Li Chenlong promised. But he's in my class. I know how to deal with him. He's still a 1-star constitution cultivator who can't absorb artificial qi. He should be of no threat. I'm more worried about Zhu Jiao. No threat? Are you serious? I mean, I see what you mean, but I'll stake my life on it. I promise. Li Chenlong cut off Yuan Mei before she could finish her sentence. I will stop Fei Wu by any means necessary. He then turned to walk out of the door. Realizing that he was heading out of the room, and I was right outside, I quickly used my shadow steps to dive into the shadows and continue hiding my presence as he left. As Li Chenlong walked out of the door, he paused for a second and gave his comrades in the student council one last glance. So, he said grimly, you guys make sure to take care of Zhu Jiao. Chenlong, Xianxia murmured softly. This isn't good. Scrambling away from the student council office, I struggled to process what I had just heard. If I hadn't misheard them, then I had just stumbled upon some sort of conspiracy. Feng Qianyong's words came back to haunt me. The tournament, it had really been rigged. By none other than the student council. I've to tell Teacher Jiao. Feeling my chest tighten from the anxiety, I quickly fled to the dormitory while vowing to see Teacher Jiao first thing tomorrow morning.